So today's video is based on one that Katy-tastic did, which I saw a couple of months back, and I felt like the discussion she had at the start of the video was kind of important, and I touched upon this in a little bit of the video that I uploaded yesterday, and it's something that I do kind of want to go into in more detail. But essentially she made a video that was called I Didn't Know It Was Gay, and it's about books that she didn't know had LGBTQ+ characters in them and relationships and themes to them. And this has happened with me with so many books, which I have been told about so many times by so many people. Read this book, read this book, read this book, or people have reviewed it, people have discussed it on BookTube, or I've seen publishers talk about it, and I've not heard anything said about the fact that the book had LGBTQ+ characters or relationships in it. Now, I know there's a couple of reasons for this, and I guess one really good thing about that, I guess, is that it's being treated as just a general relationship. We're not highlighting that fact, just like you wouldn't say, so this book has straight pairings in it, or the main character's straight. You wouldn't necessarily point that out. But people are looking for that diversity, they're looking for that rep. If we don't talk about the fact that it exists, no one's going to know that it exists. And people are going to look for books that they feel like they can relate to and want to see themselves in. So if you talk about the fact that these books exist, people will find these books and go and read them. If someone knows there's representation for themselves in a book, then they're probably going to want to read it because it has that in it. And I think it's important to share that, and to share when a book does have that in it, because I think it's important for people looking for that particular representation. The one thing that I don't like about it is that I think some of these books people are treating it as a spoiler. So there's two books in particular that I want to talk about in this selection of books that I'm going to talk about, but I feel like people think that it would be a spoiler if they found out that the characters were in a non-heterosexual relationship. I wouldn't consider it a spoiler if a character was in a straight relationship, so why would this be a spoiler? Why would we consider this a spoiler? Why is it a spoiler? And I think it's really important to think about, why are they spoilers? Why would that be a spoiler for the story when it's someone's life? It's not shock value. You don't want to use it for shock value. It's not a spoiler. It's not one of those things that we need to keep secret. It should just be part of the story. If we find a book that's LGBTQ+, then we say, you know, you want to say that it's not a spoiler. It's not that. I think it's important to share those, and if we have those, share them. Books with this type of representation, while there are more coming out, are still not very popular and still not very common. They're still not being written as much as books with straight relationships and straight characters are, especially when it then branches out from just particularly like gay relationships. There's still that's probably the majority that's on the market at the moment. But when there's bisexual representation, asexual representation, pansexual representation, those things, you know, we do want to talk about it because we want to say, like, we want these books, people want to read these books, people want to be drawn attention to these books, and we need to talk about that. Some of these I've been sent and didn't hear anything about it, and I think it's really important that we do talk about it. So here are a list of books that I didn't know were gay. So the first one that I have is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Ellery Sainz. I had no idea. I mean, it becomes pretty obvious, like, as the book's going on. It still has that, like, are they, like, will they, won't they get together, because obviously Ari is dealing with lots of things. But I had no idea that that is the direction this book was going. Genuinely, I had heard nothing about it that suggested that that was the case. And I genuinely think that if Ari or Dante was a girl, then it would be like that they had a relationship and people would talk about that. And now it's a bit better, but especially when this book first came out and when people were first reading it, people were not talking about it. People were not mentioning the fact that this is an LGBTQ+ novel about two boys that have a relationship and have kind of lots of, like, will they, won't they, exploring themselves at different times, how some people explore who they are, how other people explore who they are, and the type of things that we can do to help us find that and find out who we are. And this book is my most favourite book ever. I am in love with this book so much and genuinely would like everyone to read it. It's my favourite, but it was one that when I picked it up I had no idea going into it at all. Genuinely, it is wonderful and amazing, and I cannot recommend this book enough. For those that may not know, Aristotle and Dante is about 15-year-old Aristotle who he has a weird relationship with his family. He has an older brother that's in prison. His older sisters are a lot older than him. He always feels like he's the baby. And then his dad fought in the war and he doesn't know how to kind of talk with him about the things that he experienced. He doesn't know how to talk about his brother. It's set in the 80s in El Paso in Texas, and one day during the summer Ari goes to the swimming pool and he can't really swim, but while he's at the swimming pool he meets Dante, who has a really great relationship with his parents and is really positive and basically just the complete opposite of Ari, and he offers to teach Ari how to swim, and it is their relationship that unfolds from there, and it goes through that summer and then the next year to the following summer and then that summer as well. Ari is kind of trying to figure out who he is, and then Dante starts to know who he is and starts to kind of talk to Ari about it, but Ari just doesn't want to think about it and talk about it, but it's so good. I love this book so much. But yeah, I had no idea that it was LGBTQ plus fiction when I picked it up, but it is very much, and it's really good. Then we have Every Heart a Doy by Seanan McGuire. This is another book which I had no clue about. This book's really small, and when I found out about this book I just heard so much about the premise of it, which is that it is kind of a place where kids who have been to fantasy worlds, like that story of kind of you go through the wardrobe, end up in Narnia, you fall into Wonderland. But this is kind of the aftermath of that. The kids that don't deal with that very well, and now they're back and they're struggling with that situation. I found out about that. I was just obsessed with that whole premise and was so excited to get this book. I'd heard nothing about the fact that there's a asexual character in it, there is a trans character in it. There is such a diverse range of characters in this, and it is such an exploration of kind of exploring yourself, the way that people are put into different categories and how that's not always the case, and kind of blurring those lines like it should be, and we shouldn't always have to fit into a box. And this book is so much more than just the general premise of it, and it explores so many amazing things, and I had no idea when I picked it up. I just thought it was a book about kids that have been to fantasy worlds, which it is, but it's so much more than that. And I feel like that's something that so many people need to be talking about, because there's so many important themes and points and characters in this book, and the way that that's explored is so well done, and no one talks about it. No one. Like, I think I've seen 2 reviews of this book in which people talk about that aspect of it. Every other review, nothing. So there we go. This one is another one which I feel like people don't ever talk about. This is another one which recently I was sent a copy. I heard loads of people talk about, and that is the Devouring Grey by Christine Lynn Herman. And this book has a ton of bisexual characters in it. And in none of the thing that was mentioned, none of these characters that's brought up. It's not a token thing for these characters. It's not kind of like, I hate the token aspects, you know, and they are just like the token diverse character, like, please no. But this is just like, they're completely, this is just considered like a thing, like a part of who they are, and that's it. And I really appreciated that. But this was a book, I just didn't hear many people talking about the fact that it had a lot of bisexual characters in it, so I wanted to mention this one as well. For those that don't know, this is set in uptown New York, which I love very much, and it's about a girl called Violet who has been uprooted from New York City to go back here, and it doesn't really help that she is related to one of the founders of this town. When she gets there, she meets the other relations to the other founders of the town. There was 5 in total, and weird stuff starts to go on in the town, and they're kind of trying to figure out what's going on, who's doing it, and everything that comes from there. And this is absolutely brilliant. I loved it. Very Stranger Thingsy, very Riverdale-y. Would 100% recommend, but it's another one I thought I would mention as well. Now, the big one, which I was shook when I found out, was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which so many people reviewed. So many people. I watched countless amount of reviews for this, non-spoiler reviews because I didn't want to ruin the book for me. So many people talk about this book all the time, everywhere, all the time, and no one talks about the fact that Evelyn Hugo is bisexual and had a very long relationship with a woman throughout the majority of this book. No one spoke about it. No one mentioned it in any of their reviews, in any of the kind of like thing for this. And when I saw lots of people saying why, because it was a spoiler and they didn't want to ruin it, and I was like, well, it's not really a spoiler. Like, I don't get why someone's sexuality would be a spoiler. This is what I spoke about yesterday as well. I just wish that people would consider it as more of like, you know, it's not like a shock factor point. We don't want to be like, oh, she was in love with a woman. Oh my god, like that's like irrelevant. Like what we can say she's bisexual, that's fine. Like, don't spoil the story. Sure, don't spoil like what happens between their relationship. You know, we're not going to ruin those aspects, because that's the plot, and you don't spoil the plot, but someone's sexuality isn't plot. Like, you can say she was bisexual, like, that's not gonna spoil this story at all. This, I was just shook. Like, I genuinely, as soon as I found out, actually from Kat's video, I was like, what? You want now? So this book's amazing. For those that don't know, I didn't actually say what it was about yesterday, which was silly. When I watched the video back, I was like, yeah, should have spoken about what that story is about. This is about Evelyn Hugo, who was like a Hollywood icon back in the day, and now she's very reclusive, and she chooses sort of unknown reporter Monique Grant to do the spread of her. But when Monique gets to Evelyn's house, she says, you're gonna write my biography for me and then you can sell it when I die. And Monique's like, why me? Why have you chosen me? I don't understand this. But Evelyn takes her back through her life, because she was married 7 times, and people kind of are like, oh, she was married 7 times, because, you know, everyone's very judgmental. And this kind of goes into why that was the case in her life and her history, and it's really, really, really good. Oh my god, this book is amazing. Please read it. It's so wonderful. It broke me in the best way, and I cannot recommend this book enough. Taylor Jenkins Reid is such an amazing author. She really knows how to tell a story, and I would 100% recommend this book. Please just go do it right now. And then finally, which is good timing because the battery thing is flashing at me because it's low and I'm lazy and didn't charge my camera today. And now he's banging. He's making noise. We have We Are Okay by Nina LaCour, which is about Marion, who hasn't spoken to anyone from her old life since she kind of left everything behind. But then her friend Mabel is coming to visit, and she kind of has to then face everything that she was leaving and not wanting to face anymore. This was a book which I didn't realise when people were saying to read it, that they were actually in a relationship at one point as well, and their friendship had more romantic elements to it, which was again something which wasn't explored. I did actually see lots of people say they were unsure on whether to mention this or not in case it was a spoiler, but I think more people would like to know, so they can see that that representation is there and they can find books that they can relate to and they want to read. So yes, that was another one as well which I didn't know about until I actually read it. So thank you for watching. I hope that you kind of got what I meant from this video. Obviously it's good when people kind of just consider it as a normal thing, but you know what I mean, it's kind of like we want to talk about the diversity and talk about books that we can find, that we can relate to, and that are there. So that's kind of why I did this, and I really like Kat's video. Like, definitely when she said about Evelyn Hugo, I genuinely was just like, what? Like, my mind was blown. So that was why I wanted to do this. So totally take the inspiration from this video from her, and I will link her video in the description as well, obviously, and you should go and check that one out as well. Let us know any books that you had the same thing with, that you were reading and you were like, oh, okay, that you could recommend as well. As usual, I'm up for all your recommendations, so please leave them in the comments below. Thank you for watching. If you're new here, then I make videos a couple of times a week about books and fandomy things, so if you want to stick around and join us, then you can do that. And as usual, all the links to all my other social medias are in the description as well if you want to come hang out with me on there. Thank you for watching. I hope you're doing really, 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 really well, and I will see you next time. Bye!